Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Mandy. So what you're looking at is a painting that I didn't like and I tried to paint over it and that failed. So that's why it's blue because I scraped it. So this is a 12-inch MDF and so I thought it would be fun to try something with this surface because it's already a failed painting. And I saw Petra do some really cute like ribbon pours to make a geode using some leftover paint. And I have a bunch of like leftover paint in little cups over here that I use sometimes for regular coasters. So I thought, well, why not give it a shot? But I had to kind of use a black background because it's dark underneath there. So it probably would have worked better using lighter colors. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to remember all the colors because I did this who knows how long ago and it's not finished yet. But this is black base paint. It is Mars black, not Mars black. Yes, Mars black. And it was like an old Artist Loft container. I don't love Mars black. It's kind of brownish to me, but figured it'd be a good way to use up paint. And under resin, it'll look cool. So these are some paint colors. I think that might be Playful Peony. I don't remember. The orangey red color is Hot Tamale. The gold, that's probably Black Cherry. The gold was probably an old cell activator, and I have an old copper cell activator. In fact, the light gold is an old cell activator, and I had to speed this up like a cajillion times. So a lot of these are primary elements that are thinned down. They were probably mixed as blooms originally, and they were way too old or way too thin or something that resulted in them being in the leftover paint. So what I'm doing is kind of layering them like for a ribbon pour. And I don't think I've ever really done a ribbon pour. So I just want you to understand the skill level at this time is debatable. So the surface is small, so I'm not really getting those really cool ribbons. I'm getting more like fingerlings. So I'm trying to make it work, but I'm also just kind of playing around. But then I can't help but like overworking things. So, they're going to be kind of like, of course, naturally, I didn't like that. So I end up painting over it, and what goes in its place is really not much better. But, this is the fun part. We're doing this to use up paint and to experiment. I'll try to find one of Petra's videos where she does these. They're really cool looking. Anyway, so I sped this up. I'm not done with this at the time that I do this voiceover, but I've sped this up a forever, million, 10 times, whatever. So I keep layering them in the cup, and I come back, sorry, timer on my phone. I come back and I redo the cup. But the colors are pretty much all Colourarte and old cell activator colors. So keep in mind as you're using pigments, I did put some black paint in the cups just to kind of break things up. But other than that, there's pretty much all pigments. So they're going to be transparent or at least semi-transparent over this black. So sorry, my phone rang. I'm like spam call central today. I'm so annoyed with it. Anyway, where they look like they're bright, they're going to look more muted as they dry because they're over a black surface. So my thought was, kind of, make use of the space, and then places that you don't like, either put some glass over them or do some line work or whatever. So that's kind of what's happening. I have since added some glass to some places, and I'm still feels like it needs a little something. So as we stretch this out, we still have too much paint on the surface, so now we're going to have to, stretch and move. And at the time, I'm cognizant of, I don't want it to just be like horizontal stripes, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that, we have very little surface left, and so we're going to have some horizontal stripies, whether we like it or not. So, and the more you stretch, the more you're stretching out that color over the black. So this was kind of a learning experience for me. It was fun. But the cool thing about this is you can go in and you can add color if the color's too muted or you don't like the design or whatever. So, don't judge the process by this particular painting, but this was a fun way to play around. I remember the night that I did this, I just worked on it, and it was very therapeutic. I had been doing a lot of homework and I needed like the mental break, and it was therapeutic for my brain to try to figure out how I was going to mess with this. And so, this is the first layer. Obviously we had to let it dry, and it looks kind of wild, but the color's really pretty. This is a great way to use up your old cell activator so you don't waste it. I just layered it in there. And next I'll show you, this is the dried result. So as I said, it's going to be a little bit more muted. So what I'm doing is I mixed some Midas Touch from Colourarte in with some, I think it was Vivid Enamel from Colourarte, because I didn't want to mess with resin at this point just to get the glass on. And I'm just basically creating kind of an adhesive surface to put some glass. And so I'm using gold mirrored glass from Michaels. I didn't use any fire glass because I wasn't going to use a very big section of glass. And so I didn't want to overdo it. Now that I look at it, I have some copper fire glass that would be pretty cool. if I had added that on. And I must have repositioned this glass like 80 million times because I didn't want it to look too straight across or whatever. So you know how we do. We're too close to something, we mess with it too much. And so I ended up adding, like, you'll see it in a second, I ended up kind of adding like a fork of color and a little bit of glass elsewhere. And I put a couple of small sections of glass, like this is where the fork comes into play, because I was like, oh, I don't really like that. So I end up connecting them. So I should have added some of the Midas touch underneath the other rogue pieces that I add later. But I didn't. And so they just look clear. So I may go back and outline them with a marker or something later. But like, I probably spent an hour putting this glass down and obsessing over it. But that's kind of why I use the Midas touch, because I knew that if I just put the glass on the dark sections, it wasn't going to show as much, and that pop of the beautiful gold. Midas touch is kind of a nice light gold, but it has a little bit of a reddish interference in it. So it's a nice soft gold. It looks really nice in geodes. And so here I am just randomly arranging the glass, but my lines are going in weird directions, and I don't want my glass to like overly accentuate that, but I liked some of the funkiness on some of those edges, and I didn't want to cover up parts of it. So that's kind of what I end up doing. So then I let it dry, and I came in with my gold paint pen. I want to say I'm using a Craft Smart paint pen. So I'm just trying to kind of highlight the places I like. Kind of messed up right there. And some places where it could use some interest. So right now, this is kind of where this is at. I think I might have drizzled some resin over the top of the glass. I haven't put a flood coat on. So now I'm kind of curious if I should mix up like some other color and add it in. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys what I'm thinking. So this is where I laid down the Midas touch, not in resin, and it still needs something. So here's Midas touch mixed up in resin. I may not be able to get this where I want it without messing up this paint pen line, but I want to come around this edge either with a, what's it called, a syringe, or just take the risk that I might come across this paint pen line. This is going to look prettier under resin. Right now it looks pretty boring, but it may still need something else, but we can always add that. So I kind of want to hit up these edges with the Midas touch. I added these, and I didn't put anything underneath them, and now I think they look weird, so I think I'm also going to try to hit those up. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. It may be a bust, but we'll see. So I'll hyperlapse you now. So what I'm doing here is I have the Midas touch mixed up in resin, and I'm pulling it up through a syringe, and I'm just trying to create some lines around the glass so it doesn't look so strange. If I were to go back and do this from the very beginning, I would have used resin with the Midas touch to begin with, so I would have a nice smooth line. And then I think I would have let it dry so the gold was solid underneath the glass, and then added the glass in a separate layer. I'm also going around these funky little clusters of glass that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. I sped this up about 10 times because this video is going to already be very long because of all of the redos. So when I figured out that I was going to kind of mess this up and cover up some of my paint pen lines, I just expanded it. Okay, so this experiment thing is turning into a nightmare. So I have some leftover resin and it's getting warm. So while this didn't quite go the way I had hoped, I'm going to add some Rezinarte in some places. So I'm going to use this red plum color. I've never used it before, and it's super pretty. And it kind of goes with the colors. So basically I'm going to go in and I'm going to add it in some places where I've kind of messed things up, like right there. And I may just go ahead and use it. Use up the rest of my resin. And I could, I think I am going to use up the rest of this resin. I hate to do that, but it's getting hard already. Well, let me reserve it. What if I don't like this? Okay, so this color is really pretty. Okay, so I sped this up because I spent a lot of time fighting with where to put lines. So I initially covered up that part because my paint pen line no longer made sense, but that part at the edge I really thought was cool, and I was trying to save it, and there was really no way for it to make sense anymore because I covered up the coolest part of it. So as I'm doing this in my mind, I'm thinking I'm probably going to end up coming and just doing all of this with resin. That part in the middle, I kept trying to save that one line, and off camera I took a little bit of the Midas touch I had left in the cup, covered that right up and put glass on it, and I like it much better. So you'll see that after this, but I really love the way this red plum starts to interact with the Midas touch. So stay tuned, because right now this has been kind of a disaster and a long video, but I end up kind of rescuing this by going a more traditional Rezinarte route, and these colors look incredible. So at this point, I think I'm just going to be doing the red plum lines. So I'm trying to make sense of it, and I'm trying to keep some of the composition on the bottom and trying to put the lines on in a way that are going to flow at the bottom. And the more I mess with it, the more I realize that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So stay tuned. All right. And I'm just going to add a little bit more where I have leftover resin, and I'm still trying to figure out where it makes sense. And then we'll let that dry overnight, and I'll bring you back for the next phase, which I promise is about to get a lot better. Thanks for hanging in. Hey everyone. So I was fiddling with this and I got irritated and covered it up with glass, and I think it looks better now. And even though I wanted to do this cool ribbon pour experiment, turn geode, the more I mess with it, the worse it gets. So this is now going to just become a regular geode. I'm just going to let you in on the process of the failure. It's not a complete failure. I learned a lot. My husband said this looks like Iron Man colors, so this is going to be our Iron Man geode. So I'm going to fill in this empty space with some more of the red plum. I'm going to use a black base paste for some flat color, which will allow us some places to add lines or whatever later. I really love the effect that the Midas touch has where it moves in over the gold. However, we don't have any clean lines. So I think what I'm going to do, now I'm just externally processing before I speed this up. I think I'm going to fill this in with more red plum, and come back later. These are loose. And come back later and do some line work around these edges, because this shadow will look really intentional if we include some cool line work. I also messed up my little gold puddles over here, so I don't know yet how I'm going to deal with that, but whatever. I'm probably going to see if I can include this pearl black from Fire Dots. I got this from Pixel Paint Designs because it would look cool in here. But I'm definitely going to use some flat black. I brought my Mehron Gold in case I want to try to squeeze some lines in there. The only thing is, this is a lot more brassy than this gold, which is okay. Like, you can have both. So this could be our accent. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and I probably still need to fill in some glass here, so I brought more glass. And I'm going to speed you up for the rest because this is going to be such a long video. But anyway, Iron Man Geode, here we go. All right, so we've got the red plum, and I'm just kind of coming up next to where I left off, more or less. At this point, I still don't quite have a plan, so I'm kind of working through that. And that is the black. And the black I'm using is, I think it's a Faux Rizzle resin paste. Or resin tint, not paste. And that is the black pearl from Fire Dots. And you can kind of see I'm just trying to figure it out as I go along. I sped this up. This is about 40 minutes worth of work. So where the red plum originally kind of starts to interact with the Midas touch, I wanted to keep more of that interaction, but I ended up kind of filling in some of the spots with either the red plum or some clear resin so I could have a level surface. Because ideally, if resin's going to self-level. So if you leave too many places without resin, it's going to try to travel into those places, and you could mess up your composition. So just kind of trying to find where it makes sense to use the black and the pearl black. I only wanted to use the pearl black a little bit for some contrast. I end up really loving the way this turns out, so hang in there with me if you've been here this far. So now I'm going to do the Mehron Gold, which is a floating pigment, for some lines. So with Mehron Gold, you use very little in your resin, and in this case, I'm just pinching the cup and trying to make sense of where to add in some lines. And what's fun about it is when you hit it with some heat, it's going to do some really cool things. So it adds just the perfect amount of accent to this piece. And yeah, so I kind of messed up one of my lines, so I did some crisscross lines over here toward the left. Now, what I'm still noticing is kind of next to where my glass is in the middle, it's still kind of awkward how much Midas touch is spread out, and that's obviously a more yellow bright gold. So I'm adding a little bit more of the red plum closer to it. And what's hard to tell on camera is I kind of created some space around where it reacted to the Midas touch on the first layer. And so I'm trying to keep some of that depth, but make a little bit more sense of the middle. So yeah. And so I end up kind of going in between those layers and adding some clear to try to keep some of the interest on the bottom without having that leveling problem. What I really enjoy is normally you don't really want your resin piece to shift as it dries because it's annoying and it messes up your pattern, but the way it dries really works in our favor. So what you may not have caught is I put a little bit of that Midas touch at the very edge of the red plum that I added next to the crystal or the glass. And in a minute, I'm going to torch it and cause that line to blend even better. And then I had added the clear. You can see me adding the clear right now. And yeah, so I'm filling in some glass where I have some lower places from adding the glass the day before. And I'll show you the next step. Okay, so all I'm going to do is drizzle some of this leftover resin over this glass, but this is a million times better than what I was working on. The colors look really cool together. I'm tempted to put some black right there, but I don't think I'm going to. So that's proof that you can use kind of a brassier gold with the brighter gold, and it works. But I do like this little accent of the pearl black, but I do think it would have been good with just the black and the red plum. But this Mehron Gold, you can see it's floating, so it comes to the surface. Look at these cool cells. But it even helped shape this weird section here. So yeah, I'll do a flood coat and let you see the final thing, but pretty sure this is where we're gonna land with this one. We might do some detail here somehow. Depends on how this sets up. So yeah. Okay, so I kept messing with it after I turned off the camera, so sorry. So here where I was talking about, let me see, right next to the glass where I was talking about maybe adding some black or something, I didn't want to do that because I was afraid it would seep into the glass. So because I still had some clear left, what I did is I put a little bit more of the Mehron Gold right along the edge of where I had added the red plum, and I torched it so it would expand a little bit and sell out like that, so that looks really cool. And it created a gradual, like less harsh gap. So now it kind of looks like we did all this on purpose, you know? So I did the same thing over here. And so that way, even if the red intermingles, the gold is softening it, so it doesn't look like a harsh line. And look at the cool cell reaction. I love that stuff so much. There is some black right here. We're gonna ignore it. But I love the cell action. That's so cool. So yeah, I use Mehron Gold in my geodes a lot, but it just looks really great in this one. So, okay, now for real. All right, so I just put a flood coat on this. I want to show you where it shifted as it dried, which normally really ticks me off, but I think it worked really well. So you can see the lines moved, and the Mehron Gold lines moved even more. I think it looks great considering it was turning into the worst resin piece ever. I think it looks honestly really awesome. That even made the pearl black gel a little bit better because it kind of blended with the black right there. So I just drizzled over some loose stones. So because I have a little bit of wet resin on here, I'm going to very lightly dust some glitter glass on there. I just hope I can do it without getting it in the wet resin because this is all wet. So I put you up on the tripod. But even the way it moved here, it almost made sense of my weird little clusters here. And it left some pretty cool resin drips on the table. So glitter glass, let me show it to you. Okay, so this is glitter glass, and I got this from Meyer Imports. You can also get it from Artist Till Death. It's really just little tiny pieces of glass, but because of the way they're cut, they refract the light. So all I'm gonna do is gently put it over here where we have wet resin. And after this dries, I'm just gonna turn this piece upside down, shake off any excess and save it. Because we won't be able to drizzle resin over this, it'll lose its shimmer. So I'll show you that process. All right, so this is gonna be our final step before we do any unmolding. not unmolding, sorry, I was just messing with the mold. Before we show you basically the final result, and since this is MDF, it's not going to look a whole lot different than this because there's not really any sides. So I'm just going to drizzle this, and because this is really light, it could easily travel into my wet resin if I'm not very careful to keep my hand right above this spot. So because this is actually glass, you want to be careful how you put it on because you obviously can cut yourself. I'm not going to mess with it anywhere but in the middle. And I've had this for a long time, and I've only used it on one geode that's currently a fail. It's probably my next fixer-upper. And then I accidentally drizzled too much resin on it, so it was wasted. What I did with that geode that kind of backfired is I bought some like colored glass stones with the intention of smashing them and making my own crushed glass. And I wanted to have like a pale pink pearl concept. Anyway, it didn't quite pan out very well, and although I crushed them okay, they didn't crush very well, and because they're not mirrored, they don't have good light refraction and all that stuff. So anyway, I need to finish it because it's a waste of a board. Thankfully, it's only an 8 incher, so it's not like I did it on a 16 by 20 or something crazy. Okay, I think that's enough because I only have resin in a couple of places. I don't want to waste it because some of it's going to go away. So it'll be difficult for you to see it in this lighting, but I think you'll be able to see it. So let me bring you up close. I think I have a lot of it just right here, which, oh well. Anyway, it's very subtle, and it would be even more noticeable if this was clear glass, I think. But I think it'll be a nice touch. So you can kind of tell the difference, but because that gold background is in there, it's a little distracting. Anyway, I'm going to show you a flood coat. I'm going to show you after it dries for a final close-up, but this is pretty much what it's going to look like. So just in case there may not be any point in showing you, then I'm just going to show you. I get questions all the time about the Mehron Gold. It's in my Amazon shop. Red Plum is from Colourarte. You can save 20% using Mandy 1120 for Colourarte. Pearl Black is from Pixel Paint Designs. You can save 10% using Mandy 10, all caps. The black is Faux Rizzle resin tint. I don't even know if they have it anymore. I've had it a long time. Anyway, thanks for enduring such a weird process. All right, so flood coat is finished. Sorry about my dog walking around. I removed the tape, so the back is just MDF. And my dogs are being very needy right now, so Chloe's right here making noise. Can you not? But I really think it's beautiful. Like, obviously this is not what I started out to make, but sorry about her. She's just an attention hog today. What can I say? Shaking and grunting, and anyway, you know, she's mad at me because I told her to go lay down. Anyway, I couldn't have intended to make it and had it turn out like this, but I think it's really pretty, and I love the way the gold lines moved as it dried. Obviously it shifted as it was drying, which tells you my table in there is not level. But actually, if I recall, this MDF wasn't level, and that's why I couldn't do a bloom over my messed up. Anyway, I'm just making conversation while you can see the beautiful action in there. This is one of my favorite parts because you can see all the lacing. Anyway, I know by the time we get to this point, this has been a long video, so thanks for hanging in there, but I'm really digging it. So let me know what you think. This one is listed in our Etsy shop, and it will have a little easel because it's a 12-inch MDF round, so it'll have a little easel. I don't always do geodes on MDF, but oh, look at that. Okay, now I'm just oohing and awing. And you can see our glitter glass. It's hard to see on camera, but there's a little cluster of it on our glass right there. Whoa. You can see the shimmer. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it. I really love our little Iron Man geode. Okay. We can only admire her for so long. Have a great day, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Bye.